All right, everyone. Welcome to the sixth episode of the Below the Line podcast on the World Racing Media YouTube channel. We got the usual panel here. You got me, Armando, along with Joseph and Justin. We got a jam-packed episode to talk about. The second week in the month of May is behind us. We got some NAS trucks and NASCAR Cup to talk about. We got some Formula One, and we got the IndyCar Grand Prix. Was this the best IndyCar Grand Prix today? Does the rules package finally work for the Cup Series and F1, typical truck series? We're going to be covering that today, starting now.
Well, what a weekend has been for racing. In the month of May has begun with the Grand Prix in Indianapolis, and now all eyes are set for the IndyCar Series grand race of all time, the Indy 500. And once again, Simon Pagenaud found victory lane on a late charge in the rain with zero push to passes left. As for NASCAR, we go to the Midwest in Kansas City for a little bit of racing that included some trucks on Friday night and the Cup race Saturday night. Boy, they were thrillers. And for F1, we go across the Atlantic Ocean into Barcelona for the Spanish Grand Prix, where the championship lead between the highest constructor has grew along with 7 points between Lewis Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas. Let's start off with the Indy Grand Prix. Justin, what a race that was.
That was a good race. A really good race for it was a really good race for the IndyCar series. Quite interesting.
Yeah.
Plus we had the rain. Like we had heavy rain, light rain. And Simon Pagenaud, when he was fourth and he made those passes with no push to pass, I didn't think he would catch Scott Dixon with no push to pass. Like when Dixon had that big wall, Dixon's gonna win. And when I saw Pagenaud gain that time and be right there, I'm like, wow. And then Pagenaud made the move and with two to go and took the lead and had a 2-second lead at the end and won.
I knew the moment Pagenaud passed Jack Harvey and Matthias Slade with just a handful of laps to go that there was enough time for him to catch Scott Dixon. He was running great lap times throughout those last 10 laps. And little did we know he would catch Scott Dixon with 2 laps left and pass him in the S's in the middle of the circuit and found a great opening. Otherwise, Dixon probably would have won the race. That was Pagenaud's only chance to make a move like that.
This was the best IndyCar Grand Prix hands down in its 6-year history. I don't think anyone will deny that.
And it's only been won by 2 drivers, Simon Pagenaud and Will Power.
That almost got broken, but Pagenaud had a rocket ship on top of that. Dixon, like every time Dixon was at the end of a run, he would just the rear tires would just go away. I mean, you saw Pagenaud was going like a second and a half, faster than Dixon per lap.
I'd say Dixon was a little too comfortable, to be honest. But, I mean, he almost had the strategy right. It was a pretty close one. I'd say
that's a second.
The rain was
either his second or his third runner-up finish this season. He got one in St. Pete. I don't know what position he got in. I think he finished second in Barber. That's
second at Barber.
Third runner-up. Yeah, that's his third runner-up.
Second at the Indy Grand Prix.
Yeah, so that's his third runner-up. I believe his fourth podium of the season.
Only non-podium of the year has been round 2 at Austin. The 13th place finish.
Well, Dix is making a charge to defend his title.
And as a result of that great performance on Saturday, he moves all the way up to second place, 6 points behind Joseph Newgarden in the championship. Newgarden had a pretty good race until the end. The strategy didn't go his way. I think he had a few incidents out there.
Also, for Newgarden, he had a penalty.
Yeah, there was the penalty.
Yeah, the
took him
removal.
out. He finished 13th, and his points lead decreased to just 6 over Scott Dixon. And for Rossi, it was not a good one for him either. He had a problem right as the race began. Sits third in the championship with 36 points behind the leader. As for Pagenaud, he moves all the way up to fourth in the championship. Now, mind you, when we go to the Indy 500 in 2 weekends from now, it is a double points race, meaning that you get double the amount of points you usually get in the season, and that can break someone's year.
I mean, we saw we did well power last year.
Oh yeah, but
he was
so
like,
I was gonna say, not only making the Indy 500 is important, but finishing well in that race is even more important. Armani.
Yeah, I was gonna say double points. They mean a lot. I mean, Will Power, before he won the Indy 500, I think he was sitting 6th or 7th in the standings. After he won that race, he jumped all the way to the points lead.
Yes, and it made a difference for a good while. We got to talk about the Indy 500. There has been some news.
One thing I wanted to mention: this is Simon Pagenaud's first win since Sonoma 2017.
Yep.
Yeah, remember, he went winless last year with only 2 podiums. So it's good to finally see Simon Pagenaud break the winless streak. He deserves it. Feels good to see them in Menards going victory lane, I'll say that.
Yeah. It's his first win since Sonoma, the season finale of 2017. He broke a winless streak dating back to 2 seasons ago.
All right, let's get back on it. Talk about the Indy 500.
Indy 500 is brewing along with some news lately. Some good and bad. Juncos Racing is on the bad side of news, as well as Carlos Munoz, who's also on that negative end. As for Carlos Munoz, the rumors about him driving the 77 for Schmidt, Peterson, and Team Strange Racing has not gone successful, and he will withdraw from that team, and they will instead have veteran driver Oriol Servia race in the Indy 500. The 44-year-old Spaniard finished 4th in his best IndyCar championship standings. But as for the Indy 500, his best finish came 4th in the 2012 race, driving for Panther Racing, a team with some fairly decent runs of the Indy 500 that isn't in the race this year, of course. But for Carlos Munoz, shame, I always had high hopes on him. Almost won in his first attempt in 2013. Has made every Indy 500. As for Junk Coast Racing, Kyle Kaiser, the 23-year-old from Santa Clara, California, is under some trouble. They lost sponsorship. Their primary sponsors have been lost, and they may or may not make this Indy 500 or even enter unless something changes. Losing sponsorship is not something that anybody.
I just realized, I thought the sponsorship 32 was the same as their number 6 in IMSA, the same sponsor. I thought it was. If they could get, wait, maybe they should try getting that sponsor, the 50 car, in IMSA on their 32 car. It's the same team. They have an IMSA car, number 50.
Yeah.
In the prototype, they should try to get that sponsor on there.
But yeah, I'm gonna say, like, it's tough. I mean, to have a sponsorship go south and leave you before the biggest race on the calendar, that must be, like, I'd say alarming. But I mean, is there time between now and qualifying for a new sponsor to join?
It's possible.
It depends. I don't know. Like, I know like the sponsors, like he ran one race at Coda.
Yeah, and that's definitely not going to be good for them.
But
Let's talk about the list that we have for qualifying and the 36 total.
probably
Here's some
35.
facts.
Could
Colton Herta is the first driver in the Indy 500 to be on the entry list that is born in the 2000s.
Yeah.
Also, I want to mention something about Colton Herta because after his win at Coda, he's had 3 DNFs.
Yeah, and that has dropped him.
He went
all
from
the way to
second to
13th.
13th in the standings.
The problem
And that took 3 races.
Problem is, like, it's his car is the problem.
Car and luck, and I mean, in this race, he had an incident on track.
He really needs this Indy 5. We talked about double points. He's going to need this Indy 500 to make those points up.
Oh, yeah. And making the Indy 500 is going to be that's a challenge. And not to mention, it's going to be his first oval in the IndyCar series. And he does have some success in Indy Lights. Of course, they only run the Freedom 100, which is just a very short race on a Friday. And I don't think it does much for experience. But this is the first IndyCar season in a while that the Indy 500 is the first oval race of the year. So that is a challenge for some drivers and teams. We might be seeing someone that we don't usually talk about show some signs of improvements or even talent that we may not have expected in this Indy 500. Practice starts tomorrow.
Yep.
And how many practice sessions do they have before the Indy 500?
I think they got 8.
There's many. I'm like before the race itself. Like
8.
Practice.
8.
No. 9.
Oh.
9 total.
9 practices.
Yeah, the first one starts tomorrow for opening day, and the 500 practice. The first practice is broken down into 3 parts.
The first part is
for veterans
at 11 a.m. Eastern. Rookie practice 1 p.m. Eastern. All the cars, by the way, at 3 p.m. Eastern. We have practice 2 on Wednesday, 11 a.m. to 6 a.m. Practice 3 on Thursday, 11 a.m. 6 p.m. Friday, practice 4, 11 to 6.
11 to 6.
Yeah.
So basically, they just leave the track open for most of the day.
Oh my.
And do teams usually sit through the practices, or do they go? I mean, it's tough. I mean,
Saturday we have practices from 8 to 9:30. We have groups of practices.
Yeah, Justin, I'm not sure we can hear you. Your mic's a little bit cutting off.
Oh, crap. Oh, come on.
All right, just try that again.
You're good now.
We apologize for that.
Going on with this crap. Heck.
Who do you think we're going to see at the top time charts?
I'm going to go with Alexander Rossi. And if not him, I'm going with Graham Rahal.
Rahal team usually hasn't been the best when it comes to qualifying the Indianapolis 500.
That is true, but come race day, they usually get quietly up to the front.
Yeah, plus that team has been making some noise this season.
Yeah. Graham Rahal did finish the Grand Prix on Saturday.
Come on. Really?
All right, I think I hear you okay, Justin.
IndyCar qualifying from 11 to 5, from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. a.m. NBC Sports call for qualifying.
So wait, track opens at 11 a.m.
Yeah, for qualifying. NBCSN opens 5 to 6.
Yeah. And then after that's done, bump
We have
day is
Sunday.
set.
We have
The
practices.
top 33 gets set.
We
That's
have
what I'm saying.
10:15 to 11:15. We have practice. Qualifying weeks from 12 to 3 on NBC. And practice 7 is right after. From 3 to 6 is practice 7 on NBCSN. Then we have practice 8 on Monday the 20th. Then after that, we have final practice on Friday during the Indy Carb Day on NBCSN. Then we have the Indy 500 on NBC on Sunday. So we have 9 practices.
Including the final practice, which is on Carb Day.
Yeah, it's practice 9 days.
Yeah, Carb Day also has the pit stop competition and the Freedom 100.
Yep.
Which is a 100-mile race with the Indy Lights series at the Speedway. Let's talk about some other entries that I know could play a factor in this Indy 500. I'm thinking someone who may surprise us by missing the race. I think it's going to be Jordan King. I don't know why. I feel like, he's a rookie in the Indy 500. That could be the obvious reason, but he's also driving for David Letterman, Bobby Rahal.
Right.
And I don't know. It's just the inexperience. I feel like it's going to get the better of him.
For me, I think one of the people that go home is the 81, Ben Hanley.
Oh yeah, Ben Hanley. I don't think he's going to make it.
Yeah, Ben Hanley
for Dragon Speed.
He's never driven in an oval before. That's the thing.
And also, they only ran not many races. It's the first season. Is the problem.
And that's a team that doesn't focus much on IndyCar. Their main focus is LMP2 racing.
Yeah, but they only raced so far. They've not raced in an IMSA race since Daytona. They haven't raced at all.
Yeah, but like I said, you never know what's going to happen on bump day. Just look back at last year. Championship contender and favorite former pole sitter James Hinchcliffe missed the Indy 500 last year.
The team has to make sure this year.
2 years after winning the pole and 4 years after starting second.
But like, about James Hinchcliffe, but the problem was he got injured. No, he didn't get injured. I meant his car was bad.
Yeah, his car. Yeah, Justin's saying his car in case you guys can't hear. Yeah, it's his car.
His car was not really at all for some reason.
I already made my picks last year, and who's going to get bumped? I picked Pippa Man, Ben Hanley, and Marcus Ericsson.
Who's the other guy before Marcus Ericsson?
Ben Hanley.
Yeah, Ben Hanley.
Yeah.
Marcus Ericsson, I think he might get bumped. Listen, it's always easy to pick the rookies for getting bumped on bump day for obvious reasons. They don't have much oval experience. And you got to remember where these drivers are coming from. Most of them, they come from Formula racing, whether it's Formula 4s, F2, F3s, you name it. Those Mazda programs that you see at Laguna Seca, sports car racing, they don't have that oval experience. And of course, it's going to get the better of them. But with the practice sessions coming before bump day on Saturday, we'll find out who really will be at risk.
You have to pay very close attention to those times.
Those times will be important.
Classic Alex wants me to give a shout out to Devil's Day.
Guess we have a New Jersey Devils fan.
There it is.
Yeah. Another year of golfing.
I have no idea
Not
what the hell that
playoffs,
is.
Golfing.
Well, there you go.
Okay, Justin.
Yeah.
I'm skeptical, but I might have a surprise DNQ for this year's Indy 500.
Oh.
Sage Karam.
For me, about Sage Karam, I don't know.
He's pretty decent though. I mean,
at the track, he's been running good.
Like, first of all, his best Indy 500 finish is 26. Out of 4 races he has in the Indy 500 that he's made, there's been 2 32nd place finishes, a 28th, and a 26.
Well, some of those was either his fault.
That is true.
Some of them was his.
Oh, my bad. I forgot about his 9th finish. So his best finish was 9th in 2014 for Dreyer. But he was just not good at Chip Ganassi racing in 2015.
Well, some races he wrecked on his own, like Pocono. His car.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, Pocono, the car, he was leading actually. And Iowa, he finished 3rd. He finished 5th at Fontana, but really he avoided the wreck in front of him. To be fair, if Sage Karam's going to get bumped, that's kind of the reason why. But Pippa, man, just didn't have the speed last year. I didn't see the speed, and pretty much, yeah. Her best finish in the Indy 500 comes at 20th, 30th, 24, 20. It's the 17th place finish.
Yeah.
And man,
Oh dear. That's so important. Here's the thing. I always got 2 part-timers getting bumped and 1 full-time entry getting bumped. If it's not Ericsson, I think it's going to be a former pole sitter like last year. Which former pole sitter? I have no idea. Those are my predictions. If Ericsson's not the one to get bumped.
okay, I'm back.
All right. No, you're good.
Yeah. Well,
Cool.
just thinking about other drivers. Everyone's hyping Fernando Alonso. Is it right to pull away from the bandwagon just a little bit to be realistic enough and say that he only ran 1 Indy 500?
Well, yeah, the reason they're on the bandwagon is because how good he did that Indy 500. But keep in mind, he was.
They were on the bandwagon before he even raced.
Keep in mind, he was with Andretti. He's with McLaren now, and they have an alliance with Carlin Racing. And we saw from the April test that they got a lot of work to do. I think he was last on the timesheets.
Yeah.
So Carlin, just in general, has a lot of work to do.
That's the thing, though. And plus, I think the best driver that, when it comes to time trials, that you'll see tomorrow is going to be Pat O'Ward. I like Pat O'Ward. He's actually showing a lot of signs of improvements.
Yeah.
Well, you got signed.
Yeah, they're road courses, but I will say he did finish 2nd in the Freedom 100 last year in Andretti's team.
Well, yeah, and also think about it. He got signed by Red Bull to be part of the junior team.
That is true. Red Bull wants him as a possible developmental driver to their team. And Patricio O'Ward he just turned 20 like a week ago. And he's on the Red Bull junior team. And I mean, do you think he might just be there?
You also saw that Pat O'Ward won last year's Indy Lights champion.
And you also got to think about it. Red Bull's development team has been developmental drivers haven't really been the best the past few years. I mean, I mean, the only
aside from Max Verstappen, it has
Max Verstappen and Alexander Albon.
I like Alexander Albon. I think
Those have been like
to go to Red Bull next year.
Those have been the two biggest highlights.
But don't jump him now.
Those have been the two biggest highlights. I mean, you see
Danny Kvyat is
Gasly's underperformed. Kvyat, he's not doing horrible.
Dude, Danny Kvyat's not. I mean, I've seen way better drivers than him. But at the same time, he seems to do better than Brendan Hartley did any race last year. Brendan Hartley only scored 4 points. Well, Danny Kvyat has already got 3. And are we ready to talk about F1?
Yeah, we're talking about it now, so let's just transition.
Just before we transition from IndyCar, I think we have something to mention for this weekend.
Oh, yeah. So, all right. So, this Sunday, me and Joseph are going to get together. We're going to have a live podcast to talk about Indy 500 qualifying.
That'll be on poll day 2 of Indy 500 qualifying. So the bump day procedure will be done, and all what's left is talking about where they'll start in the top 33 and who will be the pole sitter. It should be very interesting. So be on the lookout for that. Now on to Formula One.
Before we talk about Formula One, in case any of you are wondering why the title is an unexpected turn of events (parentheses and F1), the Kansas races are actually good, and no one saw that coming. The Indy GP was good. No one saw that coming. However, F1, it was a typical F1 race that everyone expected, so that's why I gave it that title. So now on to F1.
Well, a perfect race. Literally. Lewis Hamilton won all 66 laps from the second place starting spot on the grid to win the Grand Prix of Spain. And I'll tell you, I was surprised. I thought Bottas was going to do it. But this year, turn 1 was the difference maker. And this is not the first Formula One race where that is true. It happens everywhere. Most F1 races really can be decided on turn 1 on the first lap. And this race was no exception. Lewis Hamilton has won his 4th Spanish Grand Prix in the last 4 years. Or actually, the last 6 Spanish Grand Prix races that have been held in Barcelona. Since 2014, the only non-Mercedes to win this Grand Prix was Max Verstappen in a Red Bull. Other than that, Nico Rosberg is the only driver since 2014 not named Lewis Hamilton or Max Verstappen to win this event.
I picked Verstappen to win. We finished 3rd.
I picked Hamilton.
I went with Bottas. He finished 2nd. And as a result, and Hamilton got the fastest lap award, which helped him in the points. So instead of going on with 6 points ahead of teammate Valtteri Bottas, he is now 7 points ahead of his Mercedes counterpart. And I think we might get some flashes of 2016 here. To be honest, no one has really been able to stop Mercedes. Ferrari dealing with some bad strategy, which you've heard me firmly talk about in the other episode of the Below the Yellow Line podcast. And so far, one driver has been doing the job for Red Bull. Of the big 3 teams in F1, Mercedes has clearly shown that they're a little bit more ahead than we've all expected this year in 2019.
Mercedes have been – the last time Mercedes didn't win a race, you got to go back to Mexico last year with Max Verstappen.
Yeah.
They've been on a winning streak for
Since Brazil.
7 races.
Because at
Time
Brazil.
a Ferrari won. Well, I think we go back to Kimi Räikkönen. US Grand Prix.
At the U.S. Grand Prix.
And Sebastian Vettel's last when we came at Spa last year.
And
That's
they
right.
have to work.
About Brazil, like when Like that was when Hamilton won, and that's when Mercedes, like they started their win streak because of it would have been Max Verstappen at Brazil, but
You
he
got
got
Yeah,
spun
protect
yeah,
by Ocon. Ocon spun him out, and Verstappen was not happy.
I don't blame him.
Yeah,
Any
like
back car taking out a leader would not make the leader happy.
it's
But
just yeah,
Max Verstappen is no exception.
yeah, that's true.
So back to Spain. I didn't watch the race because I overslept that day. So you guys tell me, like, what happened?
Well, it was pretty much clear cut to the chase here with Lewis Hamilton pulling away for the majority of the race. In fact, he was so far ahead, he was still leading during his pit stops. However, a safety car was called on lap 46 of the race due to an incident between Lando Norris and Lance Stroll, the McLaren and the Racing Point getting together in turn 2. None of them were able to move out, so the safety car was called and everyone was brought up back together. And pretty much Bottas had the deficit cut to 4 seconds. It wasn't enough for him to catch up to Hamilton, and Verstappen got third. But the real interesting battle of the race was for the last points paying position, and there was some controversy with it involving Romain Grosjean. And Grosjean, driving in the Haas F1 machine, has finally got his first point of the year. He is the last driver in the standings that has scored a point, pretty much, of the 17 that has. Actually, let me read that again. I can't do math right now, but you get the point, viewers. I will say, Romain Grosjean has cut that same corner in turn 1 at 3 different laps. In fact, they were in the same 3 laps in a row that the Frenchman made that corner cut, including contact with his teammate Kevin Magnussen. I think it was contact with Danny Kvyat, and then the last one was with contact with Carlos Sainz in the McLaren. Also, give a call to Danny Kvyat. Great race. He actually did better than his teammate Alexander Albon. Kvyat gets points. Albon misses out by 1 spot.
I want to show you guys the point standings to show you how dominant Mercedes have been. So Lewis Hamilton's in the lead with 112. Valtteri Bottas 7 points behind with 105. The next guy, third in the standings, Max Verstappen, 66 points.
Yeah.
Then we go down to Vettel with 64, Leclerc with 57, Gasly with 21, and then best of the rest is Kevin Magnussen at 14, and then Giovinazzi, Russell, and Kubica having scored points. But that gap between second and third, that's nearly 40 points. That's 39 points. That's more than a full race. That's like a full race and a half.
Yeah, and I will say it. I guess if you want to be realistic, Williams is having the year off. They were the only 2 cars that finished the race not on the lead lap in this event. Their lap times were just miserable, and without any exceptions, like any infractions by other teams that send drivers to the rear and all that, they have qualified last of the drivers that have successfully made a lap time. And I'm excluding penalties from drivers that have qualified faster than them for those events, of course.
But the problem about Williams, about them, their problem, I don't know, like Russell could qualify like a second faster than Kubica. Kubica's just slow.
Here's
He's
the
like,
thing. Russell hasn't qualified any or faster than anybody else besides Robert Kubica.
But why is Kubica like slow?
Listen,
He should be about the same.
Listen,
It
the car is
has
so
to do with
slow.
his injury.
it's not really about his injury.
Well,
Okay?
you know,
If George Russell, the F2 champion from last year, can't outqualify anyone else besides Kubica, then you could definitely tell it's not just the driver here that's the problem. It's the equipment. It's that there are snails this season. I mean, this reminds me way back to 2012, the HRT team with F1 when you had Pedro De La Rosa and Narain Karthikeyan. Wow, they were like the two back markers of the grid. They were so slow, not even anyone else they could catch up to. So, I mean, listen, we all have our snails and years. I mean, anybody remember Marussia F1? They were pretty slow too.
Like about Williams, they have to fix their things.
They do, and it may not take this year, but it's definitely going to come later on. How do I explain it? They're just off.
Williams, I don't know what Williams has to do. I mean, I really don't think that any driver is going to score points this season.
Unless
this is how bad it's been.
Crash happens. I mean, Monaco, what if like half the field gets a penalty? And this might sound funny. If half the field gets some sort of grid penalty at Monaco,
okay,
there's not room to pass at Monaco. Where you start is usually where you finish. If you knock out those pit stops successfully, there's no exception.
Monaco is, well, I'm pretty sure we're done talking about Spain now, so I guess we'll start talking about Monaco. Monaco, I feel like, is really one of the only shots this season I could see any team beating Mercedes.
And are you talking about anybody besides, like, Red Bull and Ferrari?
Obviously. I mean, Alfa Romeo was any team besides them. They're not winning anytime soon. The closest I can maybe see is Alfa Romeo with Kimi Räikkönen. And I'm just throwing
just off of experience.
Yeah, I'm just throwing it out there. But we already know, no other team besides the Big Three is going to win anytime soon.
Listen, Kimi Räikkönen got 13 points, and for the team he's driving for, that's actually pretty good.
Yeah, exactly. So
what about Kevin Magnussen has 14 scored points.
He's best of the rest right now.
I'm actually interested. Magnussen
he's leading the Formula. Magnussen's leading the Formula 1.5 championship.
That's a funny one right there. Makes sense when you think of it. But you gotta remember.
Like I said, just think about this. Let's say, because we know the only pace Ferrari has is first and maybe second practice. That's the only pace they have. Let's say Ferrari actually manages to put the pace together the entire weekend. You put one of the drivers on the pole. We know how hard it is to pass at Monaco. I mean, just look at last year. Vettel couldn't pass Ricciardo, and Ricciardo had 25% less horsepower. So, put one of the Ferraris on the pole, or you put Verstappen on the pole. That ain't never going to happen. He's in his sixth season. He's in his third or fourth season. He hasn't even had a pole yet.
Verstappen, Monaco is actually one of his weakest tracks.
Yeah, so you put Leclerc, or you put, for storing a name, you put Charles Leclerc on pole. How difficult it is to pass in Monaco, he's probably going to stay up there. Unless something happens like in Bahrain. Or even then, if something happens like in Bahrain, unless he can pull a Daniel Ricciardo from last year.
I'm just doing
At this point, I don't really care Mercedes wins. I just want to see someone else finish second, at least.
Fifth, ninth. His best finish at Monaco is fifth. From
Verstappen.
To go check something.
Oh, he's third in the standings, so he's doing better than both Ferraris. So you never know.
Miles better than Gasly. I don't know what to say about
Gasly. He's trying to help. Gasly's he's helping his old team out.
At this point, yeah.
Well, he's getting better. I mean, it's not like he's getting beat by Haas and McLaren anymore. Now it's he's just on his own. If that makes any sense, not part of the best of the rest, but he's not part of the other 5 main contenders either. He's just in his own little bubble.
I hear it, bud. You're right.
I'm
Now,
looking here.
What do you think McLaren? How are they going to do when we go to Monaco?
I think they're going to do fairly well. I mean, they've been doing really well all season. I think you'll see Lando Norris score points. Maybe Carlos Sainz. I don't know how well Sainz did in Monaco last year. Did he score points last year? Does anyone know?
Oh, Sainz scoring any points last year?
Yeah, last year in Monaco.
Research right now, and he go for Renault last year.
All right, so in terms of which teams could score points, I think you'll see McLaren up there.
Monaco, he finished 10th. He got the last points paying spot.
Yeah, he might. Okay, so I think you'll see Sainz around that 10th to 11th spot.
And Sainz only had 2 points paying finishes this year. In the last 2 races, Baku was 7th, 8th at Barcelona. Well,
so yeah, I think you'll see. Yeah, like I said, like 3 times already. Norris, I think will score some points. I think you'll see Magnussen and Grosjean both score points.
Magnussen, yes. Grosjean, no.
I think you'll see both Haas score points depending on where they qualify. It's going to be all about Monaco, where you qualify. If you qualify good, you're probably going to score some points. You qualify in the back, unless you have that good of a race car, or you're just that good at passing. If you're in the back, you're probably going to stay there. So it really has to do with qualifying. But if I have to throw my hat out there, let's talk about who scored points. I'm not giving picks yet.
Who's going to score points?
Obviously, I think both Mercedes will. I think both Ferraris will. Both Red Bulls. Actually,
Albon.
I think both.
How are you going to talk about Albon here, buddy?
Well, you let me speak. I will. Albon, both Haas's, Norris, and for the last one, I'd say Daniel Ricciardo.
Last year's winner.
Yeah, I think he'll score some points. As for who will finish best of the rest, I'm gonna go with Lando Norris. I think Lando Norris will score best of the rest.
Lando Norris, best of the rest.
He'll win the Formula 1.5 race at Monaco.
By the way, about Hamilton's best finish at Monaco is first. Bottas's best finish is 4th at Monaco. He then finished 12th after getting a 10th place grid penalty. In 2016, trying for Williams, he got 12th after starting 20th.
Yeah, that's when Williams was actually relevant.
So Bottas' best finish is 4th at Monaco. Hamilton's best finish is 1st at Monaco.
I think we'll see. I think who's going to win the race. Let me get my picks now. Let's go.
Hamilton.
We talked about everything for Monaco already. So I think that Charles Leclerc is going to win the race. The hometown kid's going to win his first.
Imagine how big of a deal that would be.
I think he'll get the win. If he could qualify on pole like he did in Bahrain, I think that he'll be good to go. I'll be in no engine issues like he had in Bahrain. And I think you'll see Lewis Hamilton 2nd, Valtteri Bottas 3rd, Bellow 4th, Verstappen 5th, Gasly 6th, Norris 7th, and I guess Grosjean 8th, Magnussen 9th, Ricciardo 10th.
And Albon.
That's my top 10 predictions.
God, you're killing me. All right, my top 10, I think it's going to be Vettel. Going with Bottas, Hamilton, Leclerc.
You're at 4.
Gasly's going to get a top 5.
Gasly's going to finish ahead of Verstappen.
Yeah, Verstappen's going to DNF. Okay. Don't at me, Verstappen fans. Sorry. 6th place will be Raikkonen. 7th place will be Albon. 8th, Magnussen. 9th, Ricciardo. 10th, Norris.
All right. It's not bad.
For me, it's gonna be Hamilton, Bottas 1 and 2 again. Leclerc 3rd, Verstappen 4th, Vettel 5th, Gasly 6th, Ricciardo 7th, Lando Norris 8th, Kimi Raikkonen 9th. Oh wait, Kevin Magnussen 10th.
And it's Albon. Albon's not going to score any points.
No, I think he'll get 11th.
Yeah.
Close to Magnussen. They'll be trying to get by Magnussen.
Joe Grosjean's not getting points in this race, in my opinion.
Nope. I put Magnussen for last one.
And this is another call for Mr. Gene Haas to maybe consider looking for a new driver for the team. I think they're kind of due for that.
Like who? Like who? Sam Hornish?
Put an American in there. You're an American team.
Sam Hornish. Sam Hornish in F1. Oh,
wait for a good American. And I don't know about Sam Hornish. I don't think he has interest in F1. But if there's an American driver that can go for F1, I would say Alexander Rossi, but right now he's in his prime in IndyCar, and I don't think that one.
Rossi's not going to do it. Rossi's not going to give up winning in IndyCar.
Was it Manuel?
Yeah, he was right for man. He's not going to give up. I don't think he's going to give up.
He should come back to F1 sometime, but I don't know right now. Right now, right now it's not the put.
Yeah, I don't think Rossi's going to give up competing for wins in IndyCar to run mid-pack in F1.
Yeah, if you're not in Red Bull, Ferrari, Mercedes, you're pretty much mid-pack.
It's a guarantee.
And if you're in Williams, well, you're in backpack.
Williams, you're just dead. All right, we gave our picks for F1. Anything else we need to talk about?
Ferrari. Another reminder. Wake up.
I don't know. Oh, wait. Wait.
Mr. Alarm, Baku. They definitely Mr. Alarm at Spain.
Ferrari, here's our World Racing Media weekly reminder. Get a better strategist.
They'll never do that. They want Mercedes to win, probably.
I mean, at this point, at least the best team, the team that's doing it right, is winning because they're deserving it. But right now,
you're right. Williams is going to win the championship.
No,
Armani, you're on the wrong planet. And I'm not talking about Mars or Mercury. I'm talking about fucking Neptune here.
By the way, there's oh god.
Well, think about this. In golf, you get the least amount of points, you win. So we just reverse the F1 points.
Score. You get.
By the way, there was a NASCAR at Kansas.
Oh yeah, let's talk about NASCAR at Kansas.
Yeah,
let's start with the Truck Series.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I actually watched that race.
Truck Series race at Kansas was a pretty eventful one and had a lot of leaders, including the likes of Stuart Friesen, Grant Enfinger, and
eventually
Creed. Unfortunately, none of those drivers finished inside the top 5. Enfinger got a 7th place finish. And don't forget Brett Moffitt.
Hold on a minute.
He had an incident in that race as well. And it came down to Ross Chastain giving Al Neese his first win. And that was a result of a heartbreak by Stuart Friesen and that team for Halmar Racing. Let's say Stuart Friesen was running up in the lead for the majority of the race, and the Ontario native ran out of fuel with just a handful of laps to go, giving the lead to Ross.
I don't know what they were thinking with that 2-tire strategy.
But the problem was they didn't get fuel. It was the fuel.
Yeah,
They had to get. It was the fuel man.
and it came down to Ross Chastain and Ben Rhodes, and Chastain delivered the upset, giving Al Neese his first win as an owner in the Truck Series, and Ross Chastain's first career win as a driver in the series. As for Al Neese, here's a fun fact. His only top 5 finishes have come with Ross Chastain, 3 of them, including the win on Friday Night, Kansas, in his entire history. And I'll get into something even further. The only top 10 finishes that happened outside of Ross Chastain in 2019 have occurred with Austin Waitsoff in 2018 and Justin Fontaine that same year. So basically 3 top 10 finishes outside of Chastain coming in the team. And yeah, they got the backing this year with GMS Racing, which definitely is a booster to them, giving them these great finishes. But there's still a long way to go before they get to the top equipment-wise. Great for them. Ben Rhodes comes home second, leading 1 lap.
Yeah, Ben Rhodes, I thought he was going to dominate this race. I thought he was going to pull a Kentucky.
Me too. Todd Gilliland finished 3rd. Austin Hill with a great late charge up to 4th. And Brandon Jones, who had handling issues all race long, finished 5th after starting 21st place. And looking at the grid, Matt Crafton, veteran, comes home in 6th after starting on the pole. Grant Enfinger led a good number of laps, 7th. He had an incident with Brett Moffitt, who comes home in the 8th. Riley Herbst was pretty quiet the whole race, as well as Harrison Burton. They finished 9th and 10th. Just looking at some of the results here. Really, nothing much happened on the track. There were just nothing. There were a few incidents. One with Natalie Decker off turn 4, and then off turn 2, of course, Grant Enfinger and Brett Moffitt. But they both.
Okay, this is the thing I want to talk about. I already made my opinion on Natalie Decker, so I'm not gonna repeat my words. But in case you guys want to know, I don't think she should be touching a Truck Series steering wheel at all. That's my opinion.
I'm going to give her another chance. She's still starting new, and some of the issues were not even in her fault. But I'm starting to agree that there is a lack of talent in Natalie Decker.
But okay,
I'm a believer, though. I'm a believer. I still think that the more truck races that are ran, she'll learn more, and those kind of incidents won't happen as much. And to be on her defense, if you look at her 2019 season, which I'm going to pull up on Racing Reference, in the first 5 races that she's ran in the season, Daytona was an issue out of her control. Atlanta was pretty shabby. Vegas was a 13th place finish after 12. It was okay,
Yeah.
It was just very lackluster.
Well, 13's not bad compared to Ryan Reed. Ryan Reed did not even get a top 15.
That is true. And Kansas was pretty bad. I mean, she was okay. Like, she was hitting the outside of the top 10 before that incident happened.
The problem about that is the side drafting in the corner.
That is true. But at the same time, I thought that she could have at least kept it together.
But,
I feel like a more experience would have had that truck saved. Just a little more experience.
But not even. Kyle Busch would have spun. But the side drafting is the problem.
I think Kyle Busch would have went below below that white line off turn 4 and saved
Tyler Dipple.
Tyler
Dipple was right against her for no reason. Tyler Dipple should have backed off a little bit.
It would be a little more fair if we were behind the wheels of those vehicles Friday night. But yeah, I understand where Ronnie and Justin are coming from on their respective opinions. I think she needs to do more ARCA races. Instead of running the trucks, do a K&N race. She's only run one K&N race with her deal in DJR Crosby Racing in 2019. And
I just watched the video. Natalie had a lot of room from Tyler Dipple.
No, but look on the outside. Tyler Dipple's on her quarter pad.
You have to see from a different angle. And
I saw the angle, the 0-2. Side draft.
If anything, it looks like Natalie Decker would be side drafting the 0-2.
No, it's usually a car.
real quick though.
Car on the outside, got just the car on the
He
inside.
had a
That's how
decent amount
it
of
works.
he had a decent amount of room to go for. Okay, but I'm not going to talk about Nelly Decker. I'm going to talk about how the broadcast is giving her the Danica treatment. Like I really
that is something that is true.
I really hate when broadcasts they take one person that they know isn't performing up to the task, and they're just like, oh, because it's this name or because they're this person or whatever, that they give them special treatment. You saw it with Danica. Saw it with Junior when he wasn't performing well. And I'm a Junior fan.
Okay,
but
that is to be fair. I feel like some commentators have a fear of bias. I don't want to play political games here. I'm just making that very clear. Favoritism sometimes results in, and I know Gerald Longship does this a lot with Fox. He loves his drivers. Kyle Busch, Dale Earnhardt Jr., Danica Patrick, Jeff Gordon, and I can tell you, he loves Mark Martin and so on. If they're having a bad day, he usually doesn't like to talk bad about them. I mean, but still, sometimes you just got to be realistic and say that, oh, they suck. This and this suck. But
yeah, because like if you look at the broadcast, like when Natalie Decker spun out because she got loose, they were like, oh, it's okay. She got loose. She's still learning. She was running inside the top 20. Great run from her. Meanwhile, her teammate Tyler Ankrum
is in. He started second and finishes 11th.
Yeah, he started second, was running in the top 10 for most of the race, and the same equipment. And they're both rookies. I don't think they mentioned. I think they mentioned
it 3 times the entire season. No, Tyler Ankrum. Not Tyler Dipple. Tyler Ankrum is a champion in the East Series. He's not expected to do better than Natalie Decker here. He also, at the age of 15, had 4 top 10s, only 15 in the Cars Late Model Tour. And
it's like, come on, you're both rookies.
When he was 14 in the Late Model Stock Tour, he finished 5th. I mean, to be fair, he's a lot more seasoned than Natalie Decker.
Well, Natalie Decker also has
experience. This is a developmental team. This team's not even up to its full potential yet.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, what I'm trying to say is Natalie Decker is in a top 10 truck. She's running at best 13th. Tyler Ankrum, he's in the top 10 truck.
Wait.
He's competing for top 10s.
There's a difference.
How does that make sense? Wait.
Top 10 trucks. One is performing way better than
the other. Ryan Reed did worse in a truck race at Vegas in the 17. Got like 20th for no reason, and Natalie got 13th. Explain me that one.
I'm not denying. I'm not denying it, and I don't like Ryan Reed. I think he's not talented.
I mean, Ryan Reed is kind of on the same boat here as Natalie Decker, to be fair.
Exactly.
But we all knew Ryan Reed didn't have potential. How many seasons did he run for Roush? And he was not a threat at all at the championship every year he's ran.
Well, it's Roush. What do you expect?
Mind you, one of those years, his teammate, Chris Buescher, got them a championship.
Yeah, because they gave
during that time, Ryan Reed was in that 16 Lilly Diabetes.
Ryan Reed isn't the most talented race car driver in the world. Let's just say that. And I'm gonna say
he had his flashes of good runs, though.
He's better than Bubba in the Xfinity series.
Bubba had some pretty decent runs in there too. And
but how did they close?
Sponsorship.
Sponsors? They don't need sponsors.
You do.
Mike Harmon has no sponsors.
Mike Harmon, of course, knows the risks of not having sponsors, and he's a snail. Roush is not a snail team. They do not race in the back. Two best at most, in my opinion, they're just a mid-pack. Lucky if they get a top 10 kind of team with some flashes of top 5 performances by Ricky Stenhouse. But to be fair, if they don't have the uttermost sponsorship, that's their expectation, especially for when they ran Xfinity.
Hey, Justin, you said that Ryan Reed is better than Bubba Wallace, right?
In Xfinity.
All right, well, here, look, 2015, Bubba Wallace's first season in the Xfinity Series. He finished 7th in the standings with 0 wins. Ryan Reed, with 1 win, finished 10th. 2016. Let's see what we got here.
2016.
Yeah, okay.
Walls had
2016,
9
Ryan
times.
Reed finished 6th in the standings. Bubba Walls finished 11th. So it's 50-50. Ryan Reed, Bubba Wallace was more in contention to win races, whereas Ryan Reed actually won races.
Yeah.
But like the problem about
We're
Bubba,
talking about tracks outside of Daytona.
but like Darrell Wallace Jr. at like some tracks like at Charlotte somehow he crashed himself at Charlotte, 2017.
Yeah, I remember. He led
He-
that race.
2017 race.
2016 at Mid Ohio. He drove
Okay,
on
to
the track the
be
whole
fair,
race.
nobody had any type of car control that race.
The only driver that had actual car control
was
was Andy Lally.
and Justin Marks, the guy who
Yeah,
won.
those two. But Ryan Reed did better in that race than
Well, it was
Bubba.
really about luck of the grip.
But
Bubba
like
Wallace was more consistent. He was actually
Yeah, to be fair, he was much, much more consistent than Ryan Reed. Ryan Reed, I don't know. I feel like he was very mediocre. And to be fair, Bubba Wallace, when he ran the truck series, especially in 2014, man, this guy was all that. He finished third in points, driving for KPM. He was part of the Gibbs program when he started racing in NASCAR. And why did he leave the Gibbs program? For good reasons. There were too many up-and-coming developmental drivers that were much better than Bubba, such as Eric Jones, of course, a superstar in the making, especially from what we saw him in when he first started. And, of course, dirt track background, Christopher Bell coming along the ranks. You know, it's not like there was room. And, of course, at those times, Carl Edwards comes into the team, and you know what I mean? Like, it's not like there's much room for Bubba. You get where I'm going. So he, of course, made the. I think it was. I would have made the same decision. Like, go somewhere else, go to Roush. And Bubba Wallace, like, I feel for him. Like, I gotta tell you, like, last year he got 3 top 10s and 1 top 5, led 19 laps, finished 28th in points. So far, he's 29th right now. He has had no top 10 finishes whatsoever. Has led no laps. His best finish this year has come 17th at Martinsville.
Oh, come on.
I mean, listen, Richard Petty Motorsports is, whether you guys want to admit it or not, they're not there anymore.
But my question, why are they doing worse than Corey LaJoy?
We're only 12 races in the year.
Well, Corey LaJoy's probably going to still finish better. Is the problem. They're probably
the 2019 season, though. I mean, to be fair, Corey LaJoy.
Like,
oh yeah, I gotta click to get into the standings.
Like they're driving, like Go Fast Racing is one of the slower teams. That's the problem.
Corey LaJoy is.
Who did Corey LaJoy drive for last year?
He drove
the 72 for TriStar.
Oh yeah.
The 72 car. He split the car with Colwood. And then Colwood split that 72 car. This year
he's the filler.
Yep. This year he's driving the 32. Like, Corey LaJoy's best finish this season is 11th at Talladega. Non-restricted plate finish. His best finish is 22nd at Kansas in a slow car.
I mean, you also got to think, like, Matt DiBenedetto really grew that team before leaving it.
Bubba finished 29th after 37.
And this makes me think, like for the All-Star, he's probably going to get voted in, Bubba.
I don't know. It could be. People think a lot of people like here.
Matt DiBenedetto's leading the fan vote.
Oh, there's a little thing on the fan vote? I thought you just don't hear about it.
Yeah, when they posted the top 10, that was the top 10 and like.
It said DiBenedetto was number 1. Number 10 is Ross Chalsane's 10. Is the 10th. Like, I'm looking here.
Here's who I think is going to make it in. I think Larson is going to win a stage. Bowman and I think
There are three drivers that can race into the
Yeah.
All-Star.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be Larson,
And one
Bowman,
That's 4 total.
Larson, Bowman, and
Larson, Bowman for sure.
let's go with Byron.
Byron, yeah, I think Byron or Larson, Bowman. Who else
What
is
about Suarez? Daniel
Suarez? I think Suarez. You're right.
Suarez could be part of that too. Suarez driving the 41 car.
Who is it also in there?
Let me go check. I know there's.
We completely went off topic from the Kansas race.
I know there's.
We gotta get back to.
Oh, the Cup Series. We forgot the Cup Series.
You want to talk about the Cup Series now?
Yeah.
Before we get into All Star. All right. So the Cup Series in Kansas. This was a dandy. I'll tell you, that was something else. What an event for this 400-mile race, the Digital Alley 400, round 12 of 36 in the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series. And it was won by Michigan and Penske's Brad Keselowski, who led only just 12 laps to go to victory lane Saturday night. He had to pass and hold off a dominant Alex Bowman, who led most of the final
He led
laps,
65.
including 63 total.
He led the second most laps. Harvick led the most, but 105.
104 actually.
Yeah, but it's actually 105. I saw.
I'm on Racing Reference.
But on like NASCAR's website, it says 60.
Right. By the way, I use Racing Reference, so credits to them for the.
Then we had Eric Jones, Chase Elliott, Clint Boyer, the top 5.
Chase Elliott, Clint Boyer.
Jimmy Johnson, 6. Kurt Busch, Kyle Larson, Tyler Reddick, 9.
Tyler Reddick on his second career start.
And first at Kansas. And Chris Buescher got top 10. He led some laps too.
10 laps he led.
In that 37 car.
And 11.
Kevin Harvick was the last car in the lead lap.
Yeah, Kevin Harvick.
No, actually, Logano was. 15 cars on the lead lap. Harvick was
go ahead.
Until he had to pit because of had something go wrong.
However, Harvick's third in points, so
yeah,
there's nothing wrong with him. The only difference is that he was dominant, unstoppable this time last year. And this year, he has the victory lane, but he's still up there. However, that Kansas race was not a good one for him.
There's only one good car that got a top 10 was Eric Jones. Hamlin 16.
Hamlin had a tire go down in the race.
19 for Martin Truex Jr. I didn't expect that. And Kyle Busch on 30th.
First non-top 10 finish for Kyle Busch. His streak will end up being tied with Morgan Shepherd for most consecutive top 10s in the start of a season.
Yep.
Which is 11. So Kyle Busch, what a great run to this season he's having. Unfortunately, the tire going down really would have been the only thing stopping him from keeping that streak alive. Another driver with a bad race was Ryan Blaney. He just had a car that was bad handling all this long.
He finished 32nd because he put a tire too. By the way, that's it. Orland put 22nd. Byron finished 20th. Then we have Newman, Menard, Priest, Michael McDowell 26th. David Reagan, Todd Cohen, Bubba Wallace, Kyle Busch. Chastain 31st. Then Blaney, Curry, Quinn House, Reed Sorensen, Matt Diamantino 36th. Then it was Lennon Castle, Joey Gase, Timmy Hill, Cody Ware finished last. But the problem,
I want to say something about the lap cars though. Pretty bad. I mean, listen. The blue flags need to be enforced more. Firm about lap cars and drivers that are not obeying the blue flags, especially for a track like Kansas. I mean, this is not like a short track where you're able to hold off. To be fair, in Kansas, you have a lot more room to let the leaders go by, especially when they're battling for the position. Shouldn't that be like the little ding dong in the head for the spotters and drivers to know, hey, move along, move aside, maybe like let them go past, maybe on the outside or something. Don't be in their line, but that's that's a situation we've seen a lot in many forms of racing, and it's actually part of how the race goes in endurance racing.
Like, the problem about that, like, we saw at the end of the race, Alex Bowman was stuck behind two lap cars, the 27 and the 51. He was stuck behind Cody Ware and Reed Sorensen. For some reason, Cody Ware and Reed Sorensen went on the bottom lane where Bowman was running.
Yeah,
The leader was there.
Hey, there he is.
we got
Hey
someone
guys,
else.
yeah, this is Grid Rating on Twitter.
Hi there, this is Joe with Global Racing Index Database, also known as GRID. So,
Welcome.
Good to have you on.
So
Yeah,
some
right
people
now
aren't
we're just
here.
talking about the Kansas race.
I'm here with Justin and Armani, who is World Racing Media.
Yeah,
Justin, NASCAR 88 on YouTube.
if you want, give a little description on what you guys do.
well, I could go ahead and start. My name is Joe with GRID Database. What we do is we rank all the racers in their individual series. We have 7 series we rank everyone off of. So we have NASCAR, Formula One, IndyCar, sort of the top 3 in the United States, along with MotoGP, World Rally Championship, we were just added, as well as the V8 Supercars, and Formula E. Currently, right now, this is our 3rd season, and Scott McLaughlin from the V8 Supercars is leading. First time we had someone from the Supercars leading, and overall, it's been a growing adventure, and we really enjoyed doing what we do and contributing to the discussion of who's the best driver in the world each and every season.
Yeah, when you guys emailed me a while back saying you wanted to join, and then I looked into you guys, I was really impressed. I was like, I haven't seen anyone really do anything like it, so I really enjoy it.
As a labor of love, I know started back about 3 seasons ago. There was a debate about should NASCAR use the same Formula One point system where 25 points for the winner, 10th place gets 1 point, all finishers outside the top 10 get 0 points. And that started a discussion. Well, Kyle Busch, that was the year he was injured, came back. He could easily make the playoffs based on point stat way without the win you're in. And transformed to next, well, how could we develop a system to rank drivers from different disciplines and rank their competition? Because you have some people that was considered the NASCAR series some of the top level. Then you got Formula One. That strength of competition is much greater if you're a Ferrari against Mercedes compared to V8 supercars, where this year we're seeing Scott McLaughlin just dominate everyone so far. So it's been a lot of fun, and more than happy to answer any questions from anybody.
Yeah, so you say you covered supercars, and I'm new into covering supercar events myself since I lived in the U.S. When was your beginning to exposure to the supercar series yourself?
For me, it was around the time when Marcus Ambrose started looking into coming into NASCAR when he was in the Busch series back then. And I was like, okay, I've heard of supercars, particularly the Bathurst 1000, which I think we all are familiar with, the longest race of the year, the biggest race of the year. The first time I got to watch that race live was on the Speed Network. A couple of years later, they sent Darrell Waltrip out there to cover it, and you can find on YouTube, he calls it the craziest lap he've ever experienced. And then, thankfully, with supercars, they got a sweet supercar pass for about, I believe it's $75. You get, just like Formula One in demand or MotoGP in demand, you could watch the race live. You missed the race, you could go back and you watch it. Thankfully, I also have a partner in the United Kingdom, Matt. He helps me a lot. I'm in Alaska, so we got the 2 time zones pretty much covered between the 2 of us.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned Alaskan time zones. For us, most supercar races, like in Eastern time, and for Justin Atlantic time, they start around 1 or 2 a.m. Sometimes, if lucky, 12 a.m. for the night race sets. Perth, I got up at for the race. It was 6:30 a.m. I mean, what time would that be for you? Like,
Usually the late evenings, like sometimes as early as 8 p.m. So it's prime time. And no, that's what we liked about the when Cart would go to Surfers Paradise for the IndyCar Grand Prix of Surfers Paradise. Prime time Saturday night for us here in Alaska. A lot of times when MotoGP is in Asia or Formula One, it's a Saturday night affair. So it's a lot of fun. And that's what I really like about the supercars is it's so much easier to follow because one of the things I work at the racetrack here, 9 p.m. I finish working at the racetrack, go home. I could watch the supercars. As in this last week, I just TiVo what I missed from the NASCAR race. So it's has a big advantages. Having a partner in the United Kingdom has been really super helpful. So when there's races he can't cover because they're in Asia, I could cover. When there's races in Europe, I don't want to wake up at 3 a.m. He could cover. So
yeah, here and so yeah, for you it must be harder for Europe. For us, that's when we wake up. It's our breakfast hours.
mhm.
Talking about racing and all that, mentioning Surfers Paradise, it's been a good number of years since IndyCar last raced there. Do you see a return to Surfers Paradise for IndyCar?
Yes, I do. I know you've heard probably from Robin Miller some of the talk about Surfers Paradise IndyCar. They want to go put together an event. The question is seems to be the timing. If you look at the supercars, it's pretty late in the season. You might remember, and this might show my age, in 93, 92, I believe in 94, the season opener was in Surfers Paradise. So it's more a timing and logistics. I know some of the talk is for immediate future, we could see a special occasion race, like an all-star race, something of that format,
Yeah, I
where you
remember
don't have
87
all,
exhibition.
yeah, where you don't have all the teams, but at least some of the top racers there. And the supercar folks, they know that will just increase, attendance there too. I mean, they draw a good crowd, but when they're in Melbourne with F1, huge crowds.
Oh
Newcastle, they
yeah,
got huge crowds. So
oh yeah, and
with
plus they have the supercars race. They have 4 events during the Melbourne weekend. A lot going on there. It's amazing how the track promoters squeeze in everything at once, especially for Melbourne.
Mhm.
But let's talk
Yeah,
about Bathurst for a moment. Bathurst and rumors about Fernando Alonso. I talked about this in March in another YouTuber, Danny Ajera 48, in his show called Go Full Throttle. Full Throttle. It's currently on hold right now, but in the last episode, he mentioned Alonso going to the Bathurst 1000. Fernando Alonso, now done with F1, has already covered and won both big 24-hour races at Daytona, Le Mans, and Indy 500s, his next race on site. Do you see a potential Bathurst appearance by the Spaniard?
I wouldn't rule out anything. I think the big thing will be if he could find a team to work with him. We know Penske has their team there with Scott McLaughlin, Dave, Fabian Coulthard. Red Bull has a big presence there with Jamie Whincup and Shane Vansberg. If Alonso was to go there, I see him with like one of those two teams. Of course, Bathurst, there's a lot of times split driver duty, so who knows? Maybe he's even willing to talk with one of the teams. But I think he'll be with one of those two teams because that's 4 cars that could compete for a win. But also this year, it just seems whoever has a Mustang out there is really hard to beat this year.
Yes. So, Jean, let's talk about some Formula E now. I know I've not covered much of Formula E this year, but certainly the points have been close, and so far it is D'Ambrosio over Verne, Jean-Eric Verne, and Antonio Felix da Costa. They're literally less than 10 points behind. And then you have Mitch Evans and Andre Lauder. Where do you see those drivers going into the next few races, and how many races are there left?
There's 12 races this year, and 2 of those is a double header in Brooklyn. So realistically, we only have 3 race weekends left. The season has been super close. I mean, 8 different winners up until Monaco from 7 different teams is just astounding. I know the points have been super close on the Formula E end, where DaCosta does lead. In our grid ranking, D'Ambrosio does have the lead, but it's such a slight lead. I mean, depending on the performance coming into the next race weekend, I mean, Mitch Evans was one of the last few drivers to score top tens in each and every races. If he could come back and put some more top tens, because inconsistency is the big thing there. Lucas Degrassi, early win. A lot of people anticipate he's going to start putting championship drive. Couple DNFs, couple poor finishes. Sebastian Buemi still has yet to win, so I think it's totally unpredictable. With the unpredictability, that's why you'll see in the grid ranking, none of the Formula E drivers are doing that well. I think the highest one, I don't have the standings in front of me, is about 15th place, where traditionally there's usually 1 or 2 drivers in the top 10.
Yeah, and as for that, I think it's pretty close indeed. I mean, talking about a 1-point deficit, and now on the other side of things,
I got before you continue, I got the standings up. Jerome de Arbruso, for you guys, it's 25th in the standings, actually.
25th, wow. So, yeah, that's a big drop. I mean, that's the thing with the grid ranking. One of the things we look at is the strength of competition, the strength of, the field and everything, and the ability to dominate. So, whereas, like, for example, Scott McLaughlin, some people will see the V8 supercar as sort of, okay, the competition, there's 4, maybe 6 cars that could win. Scotty has won 8 out of the 11 races he started.
maybe
Formula E.
race.
Formula E is just so close that that's what's really hurting, and you don't have that one standout driver that's sort of pulling away. So,
yeah, and on the flip side of that, it's really F1. I mean, but in this case, it's one team that has pulled away from everyone. Mercedes showing dominance. Now, Lewis Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas so far have 7 points separating one another, and from third place on back with 66 points only scored is Max Verstappen. And the constructors, Mercedes has pulled farther away. What do you see in the future for any other teams that can possibly beat Mercedes?
Right now, I feel it's more Mercedes could make Mercedes lose a race. I mean, I think it was about 3 or 4 years ago. We remember Max Verstappen's debut. Mercedes took each other out in the Spanish Grand Prix. Valtteri Bottas and Lewis Hamilton are the 2 to beat. Ferrari, I think they do have a good car, but it just seems like something's off, whether it's the new principal, having Charles Leclerc and just getting the hang of the car. They should have realistically won Bahrain, just mechanical failure. And it just seems we all saw China, the mishap with the strategy. So it's more, I think, Mercedes is the one that could, cost their championship through mistakes, which I highly doubt. I think it's more, this is going to be the year where Ferrari's going to try to get their act together. It's like, okay, I would say as soon as 3 weeks, if they still don't have a win, they're going to probably start looking to, well, let's work towards 2020 to get a leg up on Mercedes.
I think they should start thinking about 2020 and 2020. My other question is it Ferrari? I mean, is it? If we're talking about finishes of 4th and 5th and 3rd, I think, honestly, and maybe the new driver is good. Like I feel like you're just putting too much on Charles Leclerc.
I think Charles Leclerc is a good driver. I mean, we saw the talent he had in Australia.
Oh, yeah.
We saw Bahrain. The Chinese Grand Prix, the strategy sort of, but I mean, there just seems to be something where it's like there's a bit of a miss. The other thing, of course, people have been talking about is once there was the signing of Mick Schumacher, is he really going to be there a long term, or is he just more sort of there until it's mixed time? And assuming if Sebastian Vettel is still the number 1 driver. So, I mean, there's I think a lot of pressure on Leclerc, whether, is rightfully so earned or not. I think that's up for debate. So,
Yeah, and as for Red Bull, Pierre Gasly seemed to be more lackluster than many have thought of it as lackluster. I do too, but like Verstappen seems to be the one-man show on Red Bull right now. Do you think Gasly will have anything to better that?
That's tough to say. I mean, right now he's not performing to Red Bull's caliber. I know compared to like Verstappen when he started, Ricardo. I mean, they sort of came out the gate ready, started running really good. I think you're going to see in the next few months, especially Monaco, I think is a big indicator. Monaco is a place where Red Bull could steal a win with a front row start. Really hard to pass. Depending on how Max does there and how Gasly do, I think that's where Red Bull will really start looking at it and then determining, okay, should we look at this change? I mean, we all remember Kvyat's misfortune was Verstappen's big opportunity. So
Yeah, and also I'm thinking, could there be a repeat of this with newcomer on Toro Rosso, the junior team's driver, Alexander Albon? He's been my bait to the eye here. Like, I cannot stop being impressed with this guy. Where do you see Alexander Albon in the future? Will he go to Red Bull or will he go somewhere else?
he could easily go to Red Bull. I mean, right now, with what we've seen, he's really impressive. I know the Chinese Grand Prix, I think, was a good indicator. Crashes out before the race. They put the car together, comes up through the field. I mean, wow, it was really good. And, if Gasly keeps doing what he's doing, not exactly meeting expectation, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a switch in like probably the second half of the season or even at the season end. Of course, if Pierre still keeps the seat at Red Bull, it'll be hard because, you could move to another team, but what team would that be unless Ferrari decides to throw a Hail Mary to get him, which is not likely. Mercedes, I think, is pretty happy with their lineup unless Bottas has decided, hey, I'm done. I don't want to be number 2. But of course, we all know the driver from France, his name just Perez's former Esteban Ocon. Everyone knows he's sort of been tagged as the replacement if Bottas doesn't deliver. So he might be best fit with Red Bull, but you never know until we get, I think, about halfway through the season.
I mean, I think as for Valtteri Bottas, do you think he's content with Mercedes in the long-term future, or do you think elsewhere?
I think he wants the championship really bad. He wants to show everybody after last year that he is here to race, he is here to win. You talk to people from his racing background, he was always the man to beat. I don't think he's happy being Lewis Hamilton's number 2.
I mean,
I think one thing I found
number 2 this year.
Say what?
Like this performance of Bottas this year seems more like Rosberg in 2016, and when Mercedes let them race that season and they scooped after the title. When Bottas was out there last year, it looks like he was under control by Mercedes and the management.
I think especially last year he was really controlled by the management, especially after the Baku Grand Prix not getting a win over there. So I think there's a lot of potential for Bottas and the Mercedes team.
So I think also on that note, let's talk about Williams. I know, Justin, you had a lot to say about Williams. They've been struggling this year. They've been in the back row. And I know, Justin, you mentioned about Robert Kubica. He may not be up to full potential. Yeah, he's had some injuries that sidelined him for years. And sure, he's a test driver. I think he's prepared to be back in this. But, what is going on with Williams, and what can change their slow speed?
Oh, man. If I knew the answers, I would have $1 million and I'll be over at Williams right now. The big thing is Williams, they've been struggling. They're off the pace. I know a lot of times, I think a lot of fans, we don't sort of like the pay-to-play drivers. I think Lance Stroll is a good example. His father has a lot of money influence to get the sponsorship there. Um, Williams just does not seem to be that competitive with our driver to want to, hey, I got potential, I could bring all that funding. That is what Williams really needs first and foremost. I think a lot of fans sort of had an indirect role in Robert coming in. It's a feel good story, no doubt. Robert got injured, he's coming back, the fans like him, but I mean, I think if I was Frank Williams, one of the things that you probably start looking at is, okay, next year we got to change up the drivers. We got to change up who we're getting. Can they bring the sponsorship? Could we even, you know, do a motor deal? I mean, the last time I had a motor deal was BMW. That was pretty successful. That's already been a little bit over 10 years, but that might be something. But that's something where if one person had to answer, Frank will be talking with them right now.
Yeah. But I mean, I think like maybe in a few more years they'll stop the bleeding. But this has definitely been a weak spot for them. And as for their youngster George Russell, who won the F2 championship last year, do you see him staying with Williams in the near future, or is he looking? Do you think he's probably looking for something better?
I think if you were to talk to him, he'll say, oh, Williams gave him this opportunity because there's a potential next year he could be in the Williams for Kubica. I mean, now as if I was him, he might be also looking at potential other rides. I mean, Renault, we know Daniel Ricciardo, Nico Hulkenberg's there. Will Nico really stick around another year? Haas, will Grosjean stick around another year? Those could be potential big breaks. I mean, so there's a lot on his plate right now, and I think he could easily, if something good comes up, he'll go for it. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree on that. I want to leave some questions to Justin now that I think I've asked enough. Justin, what do you have?
About like Williams, it's like about Williams, it's like they've been so far behind compared to every other team. It's like Kubica's like a like 2 seconds off his teammate, and Russell's like a second off racing point. It's like they're way far behind. They can't, and also they had to fix cars like George Russell hit a manhole cover, destroyed the suspension, and Kubica crashing into the barrier and qualifying at Azerbaijan. Like they're so far behind with wrecking cars and not performing.
I feel like it's just maybe speed and all that. It's a tough one.
Here, Joe, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you think Williams at all is going to score points this season?
I don't think so, unless some big incident happens.
Yeah, the only way I could see that, I think some of you may remember, is the 1994 Monaco Grand Prix. You had the rain, totally unpredictable. 4 cars finished the race. One of them was in the pits with a mechanical issue. That's how Ligier with Oliver Panis won. So unless something crazy like that was to occur, that's the only way Williams will score a point. So.
Yeah, and I guess that is that's understandable. Like Olivia Panis won that, and it was like, I mean, there was only 7 drivers that finished in the race, and only 3 on the lead lap. So, how do you go from there? I mean, and another thing about Monaco is where you start is where you finish. I'm not saying that's always true, but it could be.
With that one, you had the rain coming down, so I believe Schumacher went out with a contact. Eddie Irvine hit the wall with contact. Jack Villeneuve, I think, was the last driver that was like, okay, he's in the lead, mechanical failure. Panis started way in the back, and just through the rain and the carnage of that race came up towards the win. So that's the only way. Something crazy, drastically crazy, like that one is the only way I could see Williams getting it. I mean, we've seen some crazy races where, okay, Red Bull gets a win because the 2 Mercedes took each other out and Ferrari screwed up. But that one, I mean, you're talking Ferrari, Mercedes, Red Bull, even for Racing Point and Haas were to have that. Like that's the only way, Williams could score a point. So
Or maybe Toro Rosso when Sebastian Vettel won the 2008 Italian Grand Prix in the rain.
That's another good example.
Yeah.
Who's your pick to win Monaco?
My pick, if he could get the pole, I think you'll see Max Verstappen. Red Bull always seem to be competitive and try to sneak a win in there. Daniel Ricciardo got a win there. If he could get the pole, I think I'll put my money on him. So.
All right.
It's a tough one.
All right, so let's talk about the NASCAR race at Kansas. What'd you think about the race? 'Cause I didn't see it, so.
Overall, it was a really good race. I know I watched it once I returned home from Alaska Raceway Park. Was really enjoying it. I mean, good racing. I think in the debate about the package, this showed like, okay, you get the formula right of, tamper spacer, the aero ducts, everything. You could have a really good, solid race that the fans are happy with. Overall, it's good. I'm a bit of a purist when it comes to motorsports, so for me, the package is something that was like, okay, it did provide good race. NASCAR's in the dilemma with the Gen 6 and everything going on. But I would say Saturday with the Formula E race in Monaco, the IndyCar Grand Prix in the rain, and Kansas, it was just a great day of 3 wonderful races.
I agree. It was definitely well worthwhile watching. I say the Kansas race is probably the best showcase of this new package. I think that's what NASCAR wanted the package to look like, and the kind of racing to do on the track was just the way they wanted. I feel like we saw a lot of passing. Cars were able to easily get up but I think most of it was based off the draft. If 2 cars were side by side, the car behind those 2 will get a run and make it 3 wide, pass them. Usually that would happen off turn 4 on the apron in that trial area. But I feel like, I mean, it was all competitive.
It was. It sort of reminded me, if you look back, probably on YouTube, the 1995 Coca-Cola 600. That was a race where, okay, these are the Gen 4 cars, but it was a very competitive race. You saw passes on the outside, 3 wides after the restarts. Very similar to pack racing, I even recall, with the old car setup back in the day. It really sort of reminded me of that. Yeah, a lot more aggressive, especially I think a lot of big talking points go towards Clint Boyer, Eric Jones with that finish, but I mean, it was something really good. I think a lot of fans, if NASCAR could work that far and get something like this, the fans will be happy. So,
yeah, I agree. And I also could say, that race was, it was close and all, but the most laps led was 169 by Ken Schrader, which is kind of a lot, but maybe not a lot when we're talking about a 600-mile race. But still, it was very competitive, and it came down to the Bonnie brothers going 1-2. Probably can't win, of many sorts. But you also had a lot of some underdogs there. Michael Waltrip, coming on 3rd. Lake Speed, Hut Strickland, Ricky Craven getting top 10s.
Oh, yeah. And I think there was only 3 or 4 drivers that finished on the lead lap in that year's Coca-Cola 600. And like you said, I think if you had a race like Kevin Harvick, leading the most laps stage 1, sort of dominating, but there's still good racing all around the pack. Good for the television, good for the fans. And I think that's something NASCAR would prefer. I know a lot of folks we're just going to see restrictor plate style racing. Well, NASCAR knows the drivers don't want that. Drivers want something where they could sort of control their destiny, but at the same time have an ability to pass, because the dirty air is something big. So,
yeah, I agree. I will say that when we come to Charlotte and the Coke 600, what do you think is the driver's finance, the meaning to racing in the All-Star? You know, what can they get out of besides the fact that it's not an actual race and that there's no point scoring? What can you benefit from the All-Star?
Well, I mean, we all know the All-Star Winston had created it as our celebration for the fans. 1992, hey, we're under the lights. The Winston Select, huge draw.
Oh yeah, and
I
the
mean,
finish
my
we'll
goodness,
never forget.
the finish we'll never forget, and that momentum really carried forward for a long time. And with the old cars, we saw really good racing. Unfortunately, it seems that momentum sort of stalled out once we had the car tomorrow. I mean, even with you all might probably remember during the Nextel Cup, the All Star race was almost a week thing. Okay, we have the pit crews facing against each other in
Yeah, the
the
pit crew
arena
challenge.
in Charlotte. The
Yes.
pit crew challenge. Yep, we had the burnout contest prior to it even.
Yeah, the crew chiefs race.
Mhm. All sorts of activities, and I feel like lately it's sort of been declining the interest. I think one of the big things you're starting hearing the debate again: should it move? Should it be racing on a different track every year? It may just come down to, well, could we have I keep saying Winston, but the All Star race to a certain level of, okay, fans know what's going to come up with the All Star race. Something consistent. It seems every few years, new format, new rules. The Winston era, so remember it was 3 segments. That last segment, 10 laps. Good luck.
Yeah, I remember when drivers got
so,
eliminated.
The survival of the fastest. Yep, I remember that. At one point during the Winston Select, when it became clear that okay, the fans are always going to vote to invert the field, so we're going to even
drivers
throw that
the
a little.
fastest in the back.
Yep. It was really popular. The fans loved it. I mean, I think that could be a wonderful solution to
Invert the field. This is not a real race. Have some fun with some rules you wouldn't do in actual events.
I mean, if it was possible, it'd take a lot of resources, a lot of money. But if I was Britton Smith, hey, what are the chances of segment 1, the oval, segment 2, the roval, segment 3, 10-lap shootout?
That would be a money's worth for the fans.
That would get the money. I know.
Even do the All-Star at the roval itself. What do you think about that?
Can you repeat that?
Joseph.
Can you repeat?
Joseph, you there?
Yeah.
Yep, I'm here. I didn't catch part of that question, so.
I know you're both named Joseph, so that's.
Yeah.
No, he asked if you could repeat the question.
It was should they race at the roval?
For the All-Star race.
Should they race the roval in the All-Star race?
Yeah.
I mean, I think the fans would really enjoy it. It's just a matter of, I mean, it's not cheap to, you got the entire infield, most of it for the RVs now gone. But of course, it got the Coke 600 weekend the following weekend. I don't know if Charlotte has some sort of package where, oh, okay, camp out both weekends, so that might be tricky. But if Brutus Smith can make it work.
Not the teams, but the campgrounds, like those people stayed like the whole time. And then they would have to leave or something in the middle just to put the track back together for the 600.
But yeah, if Bridgen can figure something out, he'll do it. So he got the resources, he has the money.
Who do you guys think is going to get the $1 million?
Personally, I think it's going to be Kevin Harvick. He's a 2-time winner of the All-Star. Don't kind of has them.
Harvick, I mean, I wouldn't cut Joey Logano out. I mean, he's shown he's pretty quick.
He's the points leader.
I'd say what about Kyle Busch?
I'm going to go with Chase Elliott because he has 3 straight top 5 finishes. And he's been more dominant than Alex Bowman. He's led more laps. He's been up front more, contending for the win than Bowman. So I think he's going to get done the All-Star race.
Yeah. Chase would be a really popular win for the All-Star race. So.
Similar to Casey Kane in 2008.
Yeah.
Especially since he got the fan vote.
That fan vote is wide open this year. I mean, the fan vote, the Open, you still have drivers like Carl Larson with no win, so they're going to be in it. So it's going to be really interesting to see who comes out to the All-Star race.
What about Matt Benedetto? Great with the fans.
Wonderful with the fans.
William Byron.
Bubba Wallace.
Mm-hmm.
Wallace will be a big favorite for the fan vote. And who do you think are going to be the 3 drivers racing their way into the All-Star via the Open?
I think Larson will be easily one of them. Bowman. Maybe Byron. Maybe he could do it. So
I think Byron, but definitely Bowman and Larson. They should be the threats.
one sleeper pick will definitely be Daniel Suarez now with the 41.
Oh, yeah. He's showing some good numbers this year.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I would also mention. Oh, yeah, we forgot to talk about this, guys, but the Truck Series race. We have a Truck Series race coming up at Charlotte this weekend. This is the Truck Series that we're going into round 8 of the season at Charlotte. I don't know, Joe, if you have been following the trucks, but who do you think will prevail in this race?
Who haven't followed it too much. I think you're going to probably see some of the regular favorites there. But, I mean, one of the things I've been thinking about, especially with the trucks, going to Charlotte, is this is going to be one of those races where, you know, it's the All-Star weekend too. Everything's going on. I think it's wide open, but I think you might have a surprise winner just because I have a feeling there might be some like big time wrecks. You might have another surprise winner, just like we got last week with Ross Chastain. So
yeah, absolutely. But I believe Kyle Busch will be in the grid this week.
Yep, he is.
He's
He's
just great at Charlotte. I mean, he's great in the trucks. He's now the most winningest driver. He has a perfect record. Every race he's entered this year, he has found victory lane. Kyle Busch.
This is be the last truck start this season.
Yep, he only has 5.
Yeah, the limits to the new season. I'm just looking at his stats in 2019 for the trucks. 4 races that he's entered, he's all won. Can there be 5 in a row? I'm saying yes. What do you guys say?
For me, I feel Johnny Sauter in the 13 because he won there last year, and he did really good last year. I feel like Johnny Sauter could be a threat.
Let's get Johnny Sauter, a very seasoned veteran, champion in the series for 2016. He's been in NASCAR since before I was born, past 20 years, in all sorts of series. I think Sauter will be one to look out for. However, I would mention Brett Moffitt and Stuart Friesen. Those are 2 drivers that my eyes just can't get off of. They are so strong in the mile and a half, especially Stuart Friesen this year, who's come close to winning in the last 2 races, a mile and a half, and still looking for his first career win. But how many second place finishes does he have now? 5? 4? But these are numbers that Chase Elliott had before getting his first win in Watkins Glen last year. So usually, I said this in the race, I was on the call with you, Justin,
Yeah.
Friday night, that there's like a glass ceiling for those drivers who keep getting second place finishes but never pull through.
I think Kyle Busch is going to win every race that he's been in last season. As for me,
They didn't come easy though, especially at Vegas and Texas. We had to hold off some hard charges. Even Atlanta, Martinsville, he pulled away at the end.
I think it's going to be Kyle Busch.
Yeah, Kyle's the winningest driver in 2 of the 3 series, and in total this year he's passed 200. I don't even remember where he's at now. He's like 204 or something, 203,
something like that.
Yeah. Kyle is easily could be one of the favorites. I know Charlotte being the home track for just about all the teams. That's why I think I wouldn't be surprised if, and of course, even bad luck, if something was to break on that truck, Kyle could lose it. So I think it's going to be really close and wide open. So.
Oh, yeah. Mile and a half package has just been great. Let's talk about the 600 for a little bit. I know it's still distant from us, but it will come before you know it. Usually after the All-Star, around that time, it just flashes. Those weeks pass by quick with all the stuff going on. But how do you run a 600-mile race compared to your traditional NASCAR events, the 400 miles? What's the different strategy that crew chiefs have to call going into this race?
I would definitely start with the setup of the car. You got a long race where the settings of, okay, you're starting the daylight, the dusk, and in the night. A good example would be you look at some of the older races, especially before we get to the stages. That's one of the big things is sometimes these winners, they're not exactly up front at the very beginning or most of the night, but they seem to somehow be there come the end. With the stages, it's a little different. You now got to guarantee we will have a yellow flag every 100 laps. Right. So it could allow the teams to, I think lately with the stages, okay, we're going to set the car up 100 laps. We know if there's at least even one caution, we don't have that long of a run compared to, I believe, 1 year. I don't remember. They ran almost like 300 miles.
When the Coke Center was 392 or 400 laps?
Just dominant.
Truex Jr.,
yeah. Kyle Busch led 377 of the 400 laps. He was almost unstoppable that whole race, as there were only 9 cars that finished on the lead lap and just pulled away off that entirely. So, that's pretty much it. And we don't go Xfinity Series racing until the day before. So, yeah, I don't know if you've been following the Xfinity Series, Joe, but we've seen a lot of 3 drivers yearly. Just Tyler Reddick, Cole Custer, and Christopher Bell stealing the show. I think there's a little bit of going on over there.
Yeah, that's been really good. Tyler Reddick, I think, is one of the drivers. And Matt, he does our Grid Global League where he has all drivers, including the trucks and the Xfinity. And I believe Tyler Reddick is the top one in his series. I don't have that right in front of me, and we saw the potential top 10 in Kansas this weekend too. So,
yeah, I think Tyler Reddick could honestly defend his title, but like Christopher Bell, everyone's on Christopher Bell on winning the title, because he lost it closely last year, and of course now Cup Series driver Daniel Hemrick was also a close one as well to losing the championship. Mm-hmm. But I feel like Tyler Reddick, he seems a lot more content than he has been when he drove for Junior Motorsports. I feel like the Kansas race, he made an appearance in the Cup Series at Kansas, finished in the top 10. I think it was 9th. But it was just unbelievable. Like, I feel like he's got a great future coming up to him. And Christopher Bell, let's talk about Bell. He's been on the headlines about the Cup Series. So a lot of people think he's ready now. However, where do you see him? Joe Gibbs Racing's full right now. Where does the dirt track driver go?
That is a good question. I mean, they could always now they got Benedetto's team, Levine Family Racing, as sort of the satellite. I mean, if things don't, I think a lot of folks, especially at the Daytona 500 stop match, will do a lot better than what he is at right now. That could be something where maybe that might open up, or maybe Joe Gibbs makes a sponsorship deal. Hey, run a second car next year. I mean, that's what he did
It
with
could
Eric
be like the
Jones.
Toro Rosso of Joe Gibbs Racing, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Just feed off drivers like that. We saw that with Eric Jones at the now defunct Furniture Row Racing team. And that same
Correct.
season, Martin Truex Jr. won the championship for them. But Furniture Row Racing is not really much of that, mainly because they came off their own before joining Toyota. But Toyota, really, I mean, they're only in NASCAR. This reminds me of Dodge in the year Penske had Brad Keselowski win the 2012 Cup Championship. When they were the only top team running a Dodge that whole year, and they came out on top.
Yep.
Also, I think for
It's been
Christopher
interesting
Bell,
with Toyota.
but yeah, what about Toyota?
Oh, I was just gonna say it's interesting because with Toyota, a few years ago, it's like, okay, you got several teams with Toyota. Now you just have the big ones, Joe Gibbs. So
Yeah, we lost Michael Walter in 2015. In 2018, we lost Furniture Row. Now, there's one standing. I'll say it's gonna be close. I don't know if there's any other team that's gonna take the Toyota turn. I hope so. I feel like if there's a new big team coming in NASCAR, which I don't think is gonna happen, they're probably gonna end up in a Toyota. But as for Christopher Bell, just such an experienced driver, whether it's on pavement or on dirt, is he caliber for another strong Cup team, like, for example, Chip Ganassi Racing, who has another strong dirt track racer to their name, Kyle Larson. They only have 2 cars. They used to be a 3-car team about 10 years ago.
Yep.
And usually when they started with NASCAR, they were a 3-car team. And, of course, with the Earnhardt merger in 2009, and they deducted it to 2, and they've been 2-car teams ever since then. You see an expansion to CGR.
that would really be, I think, if Chip could find a sponsorship. I know Chip has had it a little tricky lately, especially losing Target, not only in the Indy cars but NASCAR. Then of course DC Solar had their issues, so that
They lost their Xfinity program as a whole.
Correct, yeah. So if the sponsorship was to come through, I think he would. Especially a 3-car team would really benefit. You got a lot more teams working together, the drivers, third person. And it's been interesting just to see, because I know when Chip Ganassi, as you said, first came in, Sterling Marlin sort of carried the team. And then just seemed after Jason Leffler was with him, then
Jimmy Spencer,
Jimmy Spencer in 2002, and then it just seemed after Marlin's injury at the end of 2002, it just seemed that team sort of just was missing something. Sterling didn't get another win. I know they had Casey Mears, then they even had a Reed Sorensen.
Remember McMurray? He won his second race. I mean, he won in his second race in an unbelievable fashion.
Yep.
And yet, everyone was all over him. And I guess he must have cracked under pressure driving for them and never won another race for them until he returned right away in Daytona 500 in 2010. I mean,
I mean, that was the thing. I mean, a lot of people saw McMurray as, okay, this guy with Chip Ganassi, where's Sterling Marlin back, and Casey Mears, these guys are going to be hard to beat. And it was just like, oof, they just missed the mark. Some people I know were talking, well, Sterling's back from his injury. The Target car had Jimmy Spencer for a year. That didn't work out. The following year, and it just never seemed to materialize. I know Jamie's super popular. I mean, and that Texaco scheme, I mean,
Oh yeah.
Texaco is, I think, one of the greatest sponsors that we've seen in NASCAR, and they're not
And
a
then remember
sponsor
they
that's
got
just going to be
Montoya.
out. You got Montoya later on, yep.
They brought another open wheeler, Dario Franchitti, but Dario was the polar opposite of Montoya in NASCAR. He barely lasted half a season. Well, he had an injury, and then the team closed when he came back.
Yeah, lack of sponsorship too. So
I remember that year. It was a lot happened. The economy went down, and so did many NASCAR teams along with it. It was the recession, and teams merged. I think it was Ganassi with Earnhardt Incorporated. They went together, and then the trickier one was Richard Petty with Earnhardt, and then 1 year later with Yates. Then they go to Ford, and that actually led to the demise of Dodge, as only Penske was the last top team standing. But you're right on many occasions.
yeah, I mean, I think the big shocks from thinking of that period is still the fall of Everham Racing. They come into NASCAR 2001 with Dodge. It's a win with them at the end of the season. They look better in 2002. Some people question about Jeremy Mayfield, but
What was Casey
while
Atwood?
Mayfield was there, they did get into Chase. Yep, after Casey Atwood. And then we saw Casey Kane. Looks like a lot of potential, and a lot of people thought Everham would be that, especially with Dodge. But before you know it, it's like things just did not pan out, and here we are. And
with Sadler. Remember when they replaced Mayfield with Sadler? And they picked up the 10 with Scott Riggs, and that didn't help. For MB2, I mean, I'm 20, but I have enough of a memory to remember growing up in those days in NASCAR with the teams where like I spent most of the entire 2000s watching NASCAR.
Yeah.
Like what revolved around it. I know, like it. I've seen them. Like they tried a lot of things. They had running in the Busch Series, and like they just couldn't get things together. But sometimes teams end up like that. You know, they try, and then they end up merging. It was 2009. Actually, no. Before that, you had Montreal Canadiens owner at the time, George Gillette, it was like a co-ownership of the team, and that actually made it worse. And then they left.
Yeah, GEM, Gillette, Everham Motorsports, and that just did not seem to work out. The acquisition of the 10 car, that is a good point. MB2, they did get a win with Johnny Benson and Rockingham. They had a good veteran drivers with Benson, Ken Schrader,
Joe
Nemechek at one point even, and then it just seemed.
Well, you got to replace Nadu, and that didn't help.
Nadu had to be replaced, yep. And then, things just happened out of their control, and it was like, especially the NASCAR level then, it was so competitive.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Really hard.
2003 season, I mean, I've got to focus on. To anybody that knows the whole 2003 season when it comes to the driver list, that's like being able to study the hardest test you can ever, pass. And, I mean, there's so many acquisitions going on, and they were just no exception. I feel like that team. And then what happened later was a Mark Martin. They gave the team to, it was like a family resort in Vegas or something like that.
Yep, Gin Motorsports. So
yeah,
and so they got the Mark Martin, and then they also got Sterling Marlin with the 14 car.
Joe Nemechek, Regan Smith, and a Busch Series program going on that failed. That team didn't last half the year because the funny thing is, they actually merged with Teresa Earnhardt to close midway through 2007.
Yeah, it's funny talking about Teresa Earnhardt and with DEI. It's sort of, I know DEI has a museum. A lot of people were saying, it's not exactly when DEI was around under Teresa. Okay, they're not doing that great. They're going to be remembered as a museum. I can't help but think I was watching WTF1. They were at the Frank Williams Motorsport Museum, and you see Mansell's car, Jack Williams' car, and it's like the way they're going sort of declining. But look at our wonderful museum. It's like, you guys got to sort of invest in the future. Don't be the next DEI. A little harder to merge in F1. So
Yeah, and F1, I mean, there's only 2 cars to a team. Unlike you could go like 3 or 4, sometimes even 5 with NASCAR. And usually teams they struggle to find stability, and it usually doesn't go well. But I gotta tell you, like, from what I've seen growing up in NASCAR, there's a lot of changes that happen for different reasons, and when teams close and all that, like drivers get left out, and usually they go searching for another team, or sometimes never even find another top program in NASCAR. So I think it's like, I mean, I'll name you one, Reed Sorensen. He's still racing, and
Yep.
he's been with small teams for a good number of years. It was the complete opposite. I don't know if you remember him starting, but I do.
I remember Reed Sorensen too, and just never seemed to make an impact once on the cup level. He did a good run with the 43 at the Daytona 500. The rest of the season, sort of just a bust. It is interesting you mentioned about all the changes, and one of the things, do you remember when I believe it was 98, the introduction of the Ford Taurus?
Yeah.
Jack Roush introduced 5 full-time teams, and it was shortly afterwards NASCAR decided to make the rule 4 is the limit for full-time
That was
per
actually
one owner.
in 09 for full-time teams.
Was it 09? Really
Yeah,
09?
2009, and Jamie McMurray was the odd man out, and he actually went back to Ganassi and right away won the Daytona 500 for them.
Because I recall, maybe I think it was 98. Johnny Benson was in the 26, and he was then sort of the odd man out because they closed up the 26, the old Betty Crocker scheme, which I think is funny now that you bring that. It was Jamie McMurray's 26 team that then he had to go to Ganassi. So
yeah, man. And I'll tell you, like, I feel like it was, I think a result when they tried to do a salary cap in NASCAR in those years due to the recession. They wanted to keep things under control because they had a lot of teams merging or quitting around those days, and that's what made it difficult for stability around the sport. To find fundings, and even ticket sales were a struggle then.
Yeah, it's interesting with this charter system that you have in NASCAR. The idea that there is some more value, if a team was to just sell everything with that chart, you're locked in. Whereas in the past, you didn't have that guarantee. So you saw Junior Johnson Motorsport, what's his name, Bud Moore Engineering, the old 15 car. Those are sort of closed up for very little money left. Motorsports is one of those industries where if you get in, is the fortune's good if you're winning, but it is a struggle for new teams or a team that's just struggling competitively.
I feel like there's a glass ceiling in motorsports when it comes to going from small teams to the top teams in NASCAR. Like I noticed that with Front Row Motorsport driver David Reagan and Michael McDowell, they've definitely I forgot what I was gonna say, but they changed, and but when it comes to like going back to a top team, JJ Yeley has was known for not performing at best with replacing Bobby Labonte at Joe Gibbs Racing, or David Stremme replacing Sterling Marlin, and even replacing Brian Newman at Penske, and of course before that was Ganassi. They just didn't go up to par, but they never got a chance to rebound to a top team. Now, if you're starting in a smaller team, someone like, I could go as far as Timmy Hill or Garrett Smithley, in one of those underfunded rides. Could they make a surprise transition to the cup level? Like, I'm trying to ask myself that. Or even like the last time I think we've seen it was Alex Bowman. He was driving for BK Racing for a few years before joining Junior Motorsports and eventually Hendrick. It comes early.
Yeah, Bowman. I remember when he was in that 7 car. failed to. I felt so bad for him when he tried to make the 500, did, and his first interview was like, "Oh, poor kid, he'll get his break though." And sure enough, the break came. Hey, drive the 88 car.
And went
Really
to the
impressed
pole.
everyone in Phoenix. So
And you know
yeah,
what?
Phoenix ride.
Alex Bowman is gonna. The Phoenix thing is gonna win. I see it coming. Justin, I know you've been watching that
Yeah.
closely. He's big on Alex Bowman. I told him like he was frustrated, really frustrated after the Richmond race.
Yeah.
He's just failing to get any sort of good runs, not even in the top 15. And I'm like, wait till Talladega. Talladega is the team they're going to mark on the calendar. For some, it's just a race where they can get a top 10 or top 5, and that's it. For others, it could mean the turning point to their season. And guess what? It was the turning point. Second place finish. But yeah, it's Talladega. Anyone can get second there. No, he went to Dover and Kansas and excelled with more second place finishes and leading laps.
Yeah. I mean, if he could keep up that momentum, Daytona in July could be the big one. That race seems to be good for producing first-time winners such as Greg Biffle winning out there. A couple other drivers for that. Now the Coke Zero 400 now? So.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Eric Jones, David Reagan.
Eric Jones last year, yep.
Eric Almirola. I'm just thinking out loud here.
Okay.
Oh, Greg Sachs. Remember Greg Sachs?
Greg Sachs. Jimmy Spencer out there. Photo finish with Ernie Irvin in 94, so.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I think we got all the questions. I wonder where Armani's at. But, I tell you that. I tell you, like when we come to July Daytona, this will be the last Daytona 400 in July. I will mention.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because next year is going to be the regular season finale.
Late August next year.
Hey.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Daytona to start and end the season. On paper, I think it sort of looks like, okay, you end the regular season where you started it. The big thing is the 4th of July weekend is such a, big weekend for motorsports. And now we're saying, okay, we're going to Indianapolis, which no doubt, if there is a motorsport venue bigger than Daytona, it is Indy.
But not with NASCAR anymore.
Not with NASCAR. The question is that really something to save the Brickyard? I know if you probably watch David Land or Robin Miller, they're optimistic that NASCAR and the Holman family may not be exactly in good terms of a long-term future.
Yeah, and you know what? The relevance to the meaning of the Brickyard 400 has certainly not changed for the better in the last 25 races there. I'm sure. I think like the tragedy was centered around controversy, and even outside of NASCAR, the U.S. Grand Prix in 2005 was definitely a farce to many racing fans, and not to mention 3 years later they had the tire debacle in the 2008 Brickyard run, which was a big turnoff to fans as well. And so it's not the best impression of Indianapolis Motor Speedway, like the track itself. You know what I'm going? So, but to have the race on the 4th of July, especially with the hot, humid weathers that go there, which we saw in many races in the past, will not be friendly to the fans. But I will say, as for controversy, it's going to be a thing in the 2020 Daytona 400.
Yeah. I know one of the things, especially if we remember when Tony George from the Holman family was running in Indianapolis, that's when it seemed to, hey, let's make Indianapolis the mecca of all motorsports, IndyCar, NASCAR, F1. worked great in 94 and 95 for a long
What
time
about
with the
96?
NASCAR.
96 was a disaster.
And
Well, they
then
tried to make another Indy 500. They had the split in the US 500.
the split. And that's what I was sort of going to lead to after, we saw the success of Tony George with, okay, Formula One, NASCAR, IndyCar. But those decisions have not exactly, a lot of his decisions, okay, the split with IndyCar, as you mentioned, that hurt IndyCar for a long time, still hurting IndyCar a lot.
I don't think there's ever going to be a full recovery from the 500 in 1990.
Yeah, even this year, a lot of folks were excited about the IndyCar.
Really is.
Yep. And a lot of folks, I know you see on Twitter, everywhere, a lot of people are excited about IndyCars, which is good for the sport, but it's not the same level. The ratings are not exactly there. I know with the Brickyard 400, after that novelty, as some would say, but also the tire controversy as well, that seemed to really hurt the sport. And then, of course, F1, the tire mess. That, I think, was the biggest black eye.
The race.
Yep. Yeah, I think that was the biggest black eye, not just for Indy, but F1 in general. And I'm so surprised F1's back in the United States with COTA. So.
Yeah, I'll tell you, you're right. I couldn't say, like, for the track like itself. I mean, the Brickyard 400, should they go on another track? Like, should they do a road course? I know for the Xfinity Series, they should return. My opinion, I think they should return back to the short track in Greater Indianapolis at the Raceway Park, the Lucas Oil Raceway, as they call it.
Mm-hmm. That was the thing I recall. 94 with the start of Brickyard, and even before 94, of course, the Busch Series were a race out there. It was Lucas Motor Speedway for a while. I don't remember what it's called, but the old Indianapolis Raceway Park. I would love to see the Xfinity, the trucks race there again. And sort of make it that week long. Okay, here are the trucks Friday, Saturday night, the Busch Series, the big Brickyard 400 Sunday. So, or actually Saturday. It was a Saturday, Friday, Thursday affair. So.
Oh yeah, and of course with the addition now they have ARCA racing there on the same weekend. So ARCA's the only big racing league out there nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, for those kinds of events, flat tracks in NASCAR, they don't really produce the best kind of racing. But I will mention, like, fuel mileage races, like Pocono has brought a lot of those exciting finishes. Team when it was Kenseth beating Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch took white flag, runs out of fuel, and then almost a half a lap behind at Kenseth passes and wins. This is something else, With the stage racing and fuel mileage finishes, we haven't seen much of them anymore.
I haven't seen much. I know the fuel mile races, I think, are way underrated by a lot of NASCAR fans. But they do bring out some of the best racing, the best strategy. I mean, it seemed like in the 90s, Michigan was always a fuel strategy race somehow.
Oh, yeah.
Now it seems like if we are talking, this could be a fuel mileage. Oh, caution for debris.
Yeah, those debris cautions, man. Aren't they just pests? Let's be real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of the things I find interesting as NASCAR is having this moment where, okay, 2021, what do the fans want? We know there's a lot of talk about Nashville Speedway possibly coming back in the mix. From my perspective, I didn't see like a huge demand of bring back Nashville. It does seem more of a business deal. Bruton Smith, like, hey, if there's some way Bristol goes out to one track, I want to work with Nashville to get my money in there too.
You're thinking of relocating Bristol. That with Bruton Smith, I mean, I know he's known for making some radical changes to NASCAR, including the withdrawal of North Wilkesboro and unfortunately to the demise of other tracks like Nazareth. I think was it SMI. SMI is the name.
Yep.
It's this big group of tracks, and if you're not on there, you're screwed.
And that's the thing. You got Indianapolis, Pocono, and Dover are the 3 independent tracks that are not SMI or ISC. And I feel too often NASCAR sort of, okay, Pocono, we can ask you to do a doubleheader rather than 2 complete race weekends. The Pocono people, I think, are doing great jobs. Like, we're going to make this a big, you can't miss this event. 2 days of NASCAR racing. Indianapolis, they have the big name recognition. But Pocono and Dover is like, hey, as being an independent in smaller markets, that's something else when you're competing against SMI and ISC.
Yeah, and there's some risks being in an independent market. You don't get all the benefits from the other tracks. Like Dover, I know I have someone on a group chat that complains about Dover and the amenities there. They're just in poor conditions and that need to be renovated and changed, and they are not. And I'm sure if they were part of SMI or ISC, they would have gotten those benefits like Talladega. Daytona has Daytona Rising a few years back. A project that actually took down the backstretch grandstands, but Talladega, Richmond had their infield renovated, and of course ISM Speedway in Phoenix had a complete makeover.
Yeah, you bring up a good point with all that. I know a good example, even before some of these big makeovers, when Daytona lost a backstretch grandstand, they went to Watkins Glen. Darlington really has benefited a lot lately from ISC. After they lost their second race date, they seem to put more into, okay, we want better amenities. And now they got new seating. It got a great view from the old, considering how old the facility is. And it's sort of a huge event now, the throwback weekend and the Southern 500. So.
Yeah. Do you think the throwback weekend still has its relevance compared to its debut in 2015 or no?
The throwback theme?
Yeah.
I think it's still something that will bring the fans. One of the big challenges Darlington does have, I know from my experience, going to Las Vegas, you got the interstates, you got the big cities. People will come all over the United States for Vegas. Darlington, Southern 500, that's for the big race fans, like, you can't miss the Southern 500. That throwback weekend is just a little extra added bonus to, hey, and by the way, the cars are going to be running schemes from back in the day. Because you ever been to Darlington in South Carolina, the closest airports are Charleston, Columbia, which are quite a drive away. There's not a lot of amenities in Darlington. I mean, it's the biggest event in all of Darlington, and the rest of the time is just a sleepy little town. So,
yeah,
and I think that's where Pocono is going to really excel. If they're the first, and hopefully, in their view, the best to operate this doubleheader weekend. Well, now I've been seeing on people on Twitter, hey, we got to go to Pocono next year. Pay for one race weekend, but see 2 cup races. That's something.
You pay a lot for one. I mean, yeah, get bang for your buck.
Oh gosh.
Pocono. I'm thinking about some other tracks. Rockingham. Now, a lot of people have been asking for Rockingham to, gather things together, at least just put an ARCA race in. Or Andy Hillenberg is the owner, the track president, actually, of Rockingham. Where do you see them in the future, Joe?
Well, hopefully they could work things out and I know they got as close as a truck race. A lot of folks have been saying it's the safer barriers, the safer requirements. But if ISC wants to work with them, or they could get a partner to help them out, that's a big thing. I recall with Nashville, part of their big thing is a huge multi-million-dollar renovation, not just the speedway, but of the fairgrounds.
The super speedway in Nashville or the fairgrounds?
The fairgrounds.
Okay.
So, I mean, if they could have a partner, that could totally do it. I'm sort of surprised. I don't know if this is just something where I, and some of you may remember way back late 90s, NASCAR was looking into building through ISC, a speedway in the Pacific Northwest, Washington or Oregon. I'm just sort of surprised that, I have not heard of any discussion of a race at, like, for example, Portland International Raceway, which they used to hold the truck races.
Yeah, the road course. I know they have IndyCar.
hmm The capacity there is about 60,000, which I know to NASCAR at first is like, well, we don't like those numbers, but it's like, well, you look at Indianapolis, I believe last year when they said it was pretty low, it's like, well, if you do the math, that was about the more fans in North Wilkesboro back in the late 90s. So
yeah, North Wilkesboro, they went down as well. I would say, like, a track like everything about like a mile and a half track in the Northwest, somewhere like in Washington State or Oregon, Idaho, somewhere around there, maybe North California.
Yeah, or
I mean, we can. What about doing a race in Salt Lake City?
I think the fans.
Or Oklahoma.
I was gonna say, I think the fans will get excited if there was a brand new short track that was something similar to a North Wilkesboro, where there was some banking, not as much as Bristol, but more than Martinsville. If you watch those North Wilkesboro races side by side, pretty competitive. I think that'd be a treat for the fans. But
oh my
gosh.
Now I would say like a K&N race would be a good start for a track like that. To be real, like I think you gotta start off slow. Kind of like the truck series at Eldora, they try to contemplate. Eldora had a lot of drivers took place on a charity race called the Prelude to the Dream at Eldora. I remember getting the race off pay-per-view to watch it.
Yep.
It featured many of NASCAR's top drivers and some top drivers, even Cruz Pedregon and NHRA stuff. And I think that may have been the spark to the Eldora truck race.
Definitely.
In 2013.
Yeah, once Tony Stewart got the ownership of Eldora, the Prelude to the Dream, the fans really responded very well to the pay-per-view. And Tony he's a smart business guy. He knew, like, hey, I want to make something good for the fans here get them a truck race out here. I hate to say, but I got to get going on the run. Thank you all for having me on the program. So,
thank you, Joe.
Thanks, Joe. Take care.
Yep, you all have a good night. So,
you too. All right, I think we covered everything.
Yes, we have. And Armani, just got to be ready for the Indy 500 qualifying. Bump day is going to be huge.
Yep. All right. So everyone knows, stay tuned for Sunday, special podcast episode. You don't want to miss it. Justin left early. I'm guessing he had to do something. So
he's an hour ahead. And got told tomorrow.
Yeah. So Justin had to leave early. So we're wrapping things up here. Joseph, you got anything else you want to say?
No. I'm just really excited for what we got this weekend.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Thank you, Justin. Thank you, Joe, for joining the podcast. Thank you, Joseph, also. This is the Below the O-Line podcast, episode 6. Thank you, everyone, for joining, and see you next time.